I read this piece once. It was an interview with David Blaine.
The street magician.
Yeah. And he said the gist of it was, so he does this like up close sleight of hand magic. And he said, now that this is on YouTube, so his whole life is on YouTube. That's his whole career, which means people can go back and watch it frame by frame every time. So everybody can figure out how the trick works every time. That's over for him. So what he has to do is design tricks that are so good that explanation blows your mind.
Right.
And I think that's kind of what I'm trying to do.
Welcome to Make Yourself Clear. I'm Chris.
I'm Patrick.
And today we have a special guest. Chris Graham teaches lawyers and other professionals how to connect with their clients and teams. And since 2016, he's trained over 15,000 people at North America's leading law firms, large and small companies, government agencies, and charities. And in 2022, Chris was the head of speaker coaching at TEDx Toronto, which is Canada's largest TEDx event. Prior to founding Tell People, which is Chris's company, where he does training and coaching and the topics of communication and public speaking, etc. Prior to that, Chris was a lawyer. So he's a recovering lawyer and had previously worked at one of the world's top banking law firms, Sullivan and Cromwell, and one of Canada's top Indigenous rights law firms, Pape and Salter. He studied at Oxford University, University of Toronto Law School, and Acadia University, and is also a graduate of the stand-up comedy program at the Second City in Toronto, which is perhaps his most prestigious pedigree.
I would say so. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on. As our audience knows, our general focus here with this show is topics related to clarity of thought and communication. And given your passion for and work in the field of educating and training other people, what you do is kind of dead center of the bullseye in terms of what we're interested in. So we thought we might pick your brains and benefit from your wisdom and experience.
Well, that's very kind of you to say. Let's see how we get on here before we start branding it as wisdom. Something like that.
Yeah, no pressure.
So we've done a little bit of an introduction. Can you give us a little bit of your backstory and fill in any of the gaps that we're missing, your background in law? How did you come to be like a communication and storyteller expert coach?
That's a great question, man. Thanks for asking. It's funny. I never know how far back to go. I guess the most concise answer, or the most salient one for this context is I was practicing law. You named the two places, but they're two very different contexts. So one is a giant law firm in New York City, and the other one, at least when I joined, was 4 guys in a house in the annex. So a very tiny boutique firm. And what I took from that experience, especially the second one, is that I don't really like having a boss, which is not to knock any of the bosses that I had, but it was literally just like 4 guys and me in a house. And when they would have partners meetings, they would go into the kitchen and shut the door. And I would just sit there in the living room and like twiddle my thumbs, which is absolutely the appropriate way to run a law firm. But I was like having a strong reaction to this. So I decided I would start my own thing. And having been a lawyer twice in 2 very different ways and not really being compelled by it, or at least not 8 hours a day interested in it, I thought I would start my own thing and do something totally different. At the time in Toronto, there was this big storytelling scene. I think it's still going pretty strong. You guys may have participated in this. You just rock up to a bar and tell a story on stage, kind of like stand-up comedy, but stories, not jokes. So I was doing this a lot and I was relatively good at it. So I thought maybe I'll write a training session, market it to lawyers, because that's my community. There's a tradition of getting this kind of training in legal communities. So there's a budget and time for these sorts of things. And I pitched it around for a year. It took a year to sell the first one. And they liked it. And then it took a while to sell the next one. And they liked it. And so that was 10 years ago. It's been sort of slowly growing by word of mouth ever since.
Wow. And so since those kind of humble and organic beginnings almost 10 years ago, you've trained over 15,000 professionals. So you obviously got some traction and this has been working. Congrats on the success. I'm curious from your experience working with that many people, what major patterns do you notice in terms of communication gaps, the things people struggle with? I imagine there are some themes that surface again and again. I'd love to hear your take on what those are.
That's a good question. You know, it's interesting. I am I think constitutionally opposed to generalizations. And I think something that I notice over and over again in people is a tendency to have what I just learned today is sometimes called main character energy. And so
Yeah.
yeah, and I'd never heard that phrase before. I cannot take credit for it. That's an amazing phrase. But it's a tendency
Agreed.
to universalize your perception of things, and not in a mean way or in a calculating way, just in our human way. I mean, we have to make generalizations to get on in the world, but I think one of the hardest things about communication, like where it can go the most sideways unexpectedly, is when you fail to realize that your perception of the world is not universal. And that makes it very hard to communicate. It makes it very hard to understand why your communication isn't working. And that manifests in lots and lots of different ways. But I think that's probably the main problem or challenge that I see for people over the last 10 years. I don't know. You guys must see this kind of stuff in your work too. Like, what do you guys think about that?
Yeah. I
sure.
really like the way you put that, because a lot of the work that I do in one-on-one coaching with leaders and executives is around communication, because the majority of what we do and where things fall apart in particular is some form of communication failure. And I like what you said there about the fundamental flaw being this presumption that others are like we are, or that our perspective is an obvious one. And then therefore, if it makes sense in my head, then whatever noises I make to try to represent that obviously also makes sense to everyone,
Yeah.
except not at all.
Yeah.
How do you navigate this? Like when you encounter this in the world, I'm curious.
One of the ways I've started thinking about and talking about communication is in my former life, I was a product guy, kind of in the startup world. And so I talk about it from a product manager perspective. And I say, okay, if I envision my communication as a product or as a set of features on a product, then it's a thing that I'm delivering to someone else for a particular purpose. And so I ask some product manager questions like, who's my user avatar? What do they care about? What's their level of technical understanding and expertise? What are the things they're focused on? So I understand the user. And then what's the use case? What are they going to do with this product that I'm handing them? And so if I know who my user is and I know what they're trying to accomplish, I can reverse engineer what the product has to be useful to them. And so it gets my attention off of what I feel like talking about and over into, what am I giving this person? What are they going to do with it? Like, what tool do they need for their job? And how can I give them the right tool?
That's an interesting analogy. I like that.
It makes perfect sense to me, but that could be my main character syndrome. When I talk to product people, they seem to like it. But I think it's one of these things you've got to actually practice to get better at.
100%. I mean, you guys must, in a way you practice all the time. You do this podcast, and it's extra challenging because you can't actually see the people you're talking to. Like the audience just exists in your imagination as like a construct.
Yeah, we just lob it out and we hope that it lands.
That's not a bad strategy, man. That's how I do it a lot. It feels like.
That's kind of all you can do, especially in a medium like this. You just kind of put it out there and you hope that someone has a takeaway. I come from a performance background, so a lot of theater, music, that sort of thing. And that's a similar thing too, where, you put something out into the world and you just you hope it lands in the way that you want it to land. And sometimes people's interpretations of things are not at all where you were going with it. I was reading an interview with Don McLean, who wrote American Pie. Yeah. And he was talking about he wrote it in a way that was very open to interpretation. And that was on purpose so that people can draw what they need at the time that they're hearing the song from the song itself. So
I heard, so two quotes. One was from another songwriter who said something like, the trick to writing really good song lyrics is they have to be specific enough that it's clearly about something. In the songwriter's mind, it's about something personal, but it also needs to be vague and generic enough that people can project all manner of different things onto it so that they can also find it meaningful and connected to their own lives.
Yeah.
There's a sweet spot. Back to Don McLean, there was an interview where somebody asked him, what does American Pie mean?
Yeah.
And his response was, American Pie means I don't have to work anymore if I don't want to.
Yeah. I have another friend actually whose name is also Chris, and he always says the more personal, the more universal.
Right.
So, there's a great Taylor Swift song called Dear John, which is a perfect example of this. It's about a very specific person, but that's also John Doe is the name of the sort of miscellaneous, unidentified thing. Yeah. I appreciate what you're saying, Patrick, especially about the performance thing. I wrestle with this increasingly in my work, which is I work on communication and I teach people in these workshops and so on. But the way that I come up with the things that I try to teach people is really, I think of it as much more of a creative expression. It's like, what am I interested in making? What feels meaningful for me? And then I like, my audience is in my mind when I do this. I don't exist on an island, but I definitely don't, what you described, Chris, what's the avatar and what's the use case and so on. Like indirectly at best is the way I have sort of thought about this. And over the years, it's kind of paid off. I guess it's been fortunate that most of the stuff that I've made has found some kind of an audience. But I do sometimes feel a bit weird when people ask me to work with them and they're like, why do you think your material is relevant now and so on? And I have to be like, I don't know at all, actually. I just do it. And if people like it, I keep doing it. And not very many people are satisfied with that answer. So I try to steer the conversation away from that question. My only solution to the problem.
That's good.
In the coaching landscape, it's a similar, like, what do you do? Like, I can show you. It's tough to tell you.
Right.
Yeah.
So in terms of the work that you do, I imagine you work in several formats, like facilitated workshops with smaller, different sizes of groups, one-on-one coaching. What's the breakdown of the different kinds of services you provide?
I mean, it's mostly group-based work. I take now a very limited number of individual coaching clients, and that work is primarily focused on talk writing. So TEDx Toronto is no more, and TEDx I think is kind of on the wane, but like making a TED style talk where it's really important to you, it's meaningful, you've set aside like a lot of time to work on it. I'll help people do that on a limited basis every year, a couple of people. And then the rest of it is more, I guess it's called a workshop. Somebody actually said this great thing to me yesterday. They called me because they wanted something that was a keynote, but not a lecture, not a workshop, but they want people to do stuff. And that's basically what I do. So I try to make things that are like very interesting, very meaningful, also very interactive, because like not even I can listen to myself talk for an hour. And so I call it a workshop, but there's a real performance element. It's sort of low on the lecture side. I feel like that answer was very confusing to your point.
No, it's like kind of triangulating in on kind of what it is, but also some of the categories it doesn't fit perfectly into. I don't know what you call these non-workshop, non-speech keynote talks, let's say. Do you have a number of them that are prepackaged and ready to go and you just kind of offer a menu of choices to people, or do you design them custom a la carte? Is it a mix of both?
I guess it's kind of a mix of both. Like if I zoom out on my whole career for the last decade, I've tried to write at least one show a year. And I counted it up once. I mean, I think I've probably written 15 shows at different portions. 2 of those 15 account for like 80% of my work, as with most things. And so I guess at any given time, I have a couple of things that I've been doing a bunch and I really like. Depending on the situation, I'll sometimes make something a bit different if I have more time. Like if I'm not very busy, I'll say yes to way more things. And that's often when I'll create more stuff. But increasingly, I think there's a huge advantage to having, for me at least, to having something that people can see in advance and know what they're getting. And it also helps me, there's less time spent trying to create new material, but all of that time then gets poured into rehearsal. And there's no substitute for just doing it 100 times in front of different people and ideas emerge. And I mean, you guys know all of this stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
So
yeah,
if we talked 5 years ago, I'd probably have a very different answer to that question. Lately, been congealing around this notion of I want to do a few things very, very well, and then just try to find the people with whom that resonates. And hopefully there's enough resonance that I can sustain myself.
Right.
Yeah.
How long is an event typically?
Like an hour, 75 minutes, give or take.
So the work you're doing is you're helping people sort of improve their communication skills. You're helping people to be able to be better storytellers. I had a speech coach who was a director of a production that I was in once who said, time is our most valuable currency. And so the work that you're doing, it sounds like, is helping people to improve their communication so that when someone does give you their attention and their time, which is the most valuable thing that they have, you are helping them to spend it in a way that when they walk away, they won't be like, man, I wish I hadn't spent my time there.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I would say I maybe come at it in a slightly different way, which is more about how people can be present with each other and just have meaningful interactions. So I'm much less outcome oriented. I appreciate what you're saying, Patrick, and I think that makes sense. That I feel like I've spent my time well, and like this conversation that we're having, this is very meaningful. But for me, at least, foregrounding like meaning and presence is a bit agnostic to the actual outcome. And I just sort of trust that if we connect meaningfully, whatever emerges from that will be worth its time, irrespective of whatever it looks like. I see you guys are nodding a lot. I guess everybody can see that. We're on video.
We're on video.
I did one of these the other day and it was not on video. And so I kept we were like pointing out each other's facial expressions.
Narrating the...
Well, to be fair, some people might only be listening. Is there a specific tool set or like a practical exercise that you'll incorporate in most of your trainings? Is there like a building block that you start with? Is there a foundation that you set?
I guess it really depends on the challenge that people are trying to work on. So if it's storytelling, there's a simple framework that I learned somewhere. It's challenge, choice, outcome. So if you're trying to figure out a story to tell people, what's a challenge you face? What choice did you make in response to that challenge? And then what happened as a result of your choice? So that's a handy framework. But also, to be honest, at a higher level, I think being in the communication business means you just have to do it well in front of people so they can understand how to do it well.
You're modeling it for them.
Yeah. And there's a real, I maybe it's like this for other topics, but like, you better be an amazing communicator / storyteller if you're out there trying to teach people communication.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I sort of imagine people are paying like very close attention to what's happening at the front of the room when I'm up there because I'm allegedly supposed to be very good at this. But circling back to your question, I guess my basic approach to teach people is I'm going to talk to you about the problem that we're here to talk about. Then I'm going to explain to you how I just talked to you about it was very effective. And then you're going to try to do what I just did using the framework that I just explained to you. That would be the main.
I like it. Yeah. So it's a bit of a sneak approach. You talk to them about, here's why I'm here, here's what we're doing today. But you do it in a way that models what you're going to teach them. And then, so once you've modeled it, you tell them, hey, I just modeled something. Let's deconstruct what I just did so you can understand why that worked. And then they get to apply it and try to do it themselves. So it's kind of, they watch first, then you explain what just happened, and then you encourage them to try it.
Yeah. The thing about communication is that everybody already knows how to communicate. And if I go in, so like take you, Chris, you work with these executives, like the reality is they're doing so well in the world, they can afford to hire you.
Yes.
And the same with me. And so I always have this like a great deal of humility. I'm sure you're the same about like what I'm here to do. And to go in and foreground, like, I'm going to make you better. I think that's an insane thing to say to somebody who's, to be honest, even alive as a communicator. Cause like people have family, like you can do so much without ever meeting me in the world. And so I guess the way I've tried to come at this is I like you said the word like a sneak or a surprise approach, which is to just kind of like have a conversation with people so their guard isn't up about this guy's trying to change what I'm doing, and have them kind of be into it and then be like, okay, so did you enjoy that? Because I built that for you. Like that wasn't a spontaneous thing. And then what happened? And then great. So now there's the space that's opened up, this curiosity, and then we can take that curiosity into learning about, whatever communication challenge we're here for.
Right. I like that. I like that structure and that flow. It's very non-threatening and it eases people into it. And it also, there's a little surprise, which is kind of the hook. And you say, hey, that thing that just felt very organic and natural, I planned that and I built it on purpose. And do you want to see what's behind the curtain?
Yeah. I it's also kind of fun for me to make.
Yeah.
As opposed to like a lecture. I read this piece once. It was an interview with David Blaine.
The street magician.
Yeah. And he said the gist of it was, so he does this like up close sleight of hand magic. And he said, now that this is on YouTube, so his whole life is on YouTube. That's his whole career, which means people can go back and watch it frame by frame every time. So everybody can figure out how the trick works every time. That's over for him. So what he has to do is design tricks that are so good that explanation blows your mind.
Right.
And I think that's kind of what I'm trying to do.
I like that. It's not just the sleight of hand. You're going to marvel at the ingenuity of the design of this thing.
Yeah, that's what keeps people, because like people can figure out the trick. So the trick itself is not enough anymore, even though it's like very amazing and smooth when he does it.
Yeah.
Like there has to be this next thing. And communication, I think, is kind of like this. Like people can figure out how to have great conversations without me.
Yeah.
They already are.
So I liked what you said earlier. you mentioned a focus on helping people be present and connect with one another. And so it's less outcome driven and goal oriented, and it's more about being than doing. And just kind of trusting that if you get the being right and the connection, then whatever flows from that is probably going to be enjoyable, useful, rewarding. It'll be something that people want more of in their lives.
I think so.
Yeah. And so how do you convey that to people? How do you help people get better at being present and connected with one another? Because it's a thing that we're not taught how to do. And it's even like you hear more and more of the language around this. It's starting to become more common out there in the world. But for a lot of people, it's like even talking about being and connecting and being present is a little foreign to them. So how do you take people from wherever they're at and give them a bit more of this?
Before we do that, can I just ask a question? What's an example of like this? I think you're right, but what's an example of this like language being out in the world? Like, where have you seen it kind of trickling around?
So when I was first exposed to anything like this, it was all brand new to me. Like this idea of how present are you? And let's do this little exercise to get more present. And I was like, what the hell are they talking about? Which shows you the degree to which I was in my head at that stage in my life. I had no idea what they even meant by being present.
Yeah.
And then I had to have the felt experience of it. And it's like, this is a very different experience from my norm, which is my focus is mostly on the thoughts in my head, but I had to feel it to get it.
That's interesting. That's interesting. You know, I don't know if this is a great answer, but what's coming up for me, at least as I think about this, is circling back to what I said before about trying to make something that I find meaningful and then hope enough people are into it, that it resonates with enough people. And so I think I've never written a session or done sessions that was primarily about like, let's have presence, let's have connection. But I try to just like be a person publicly. And when people encounter me, and I guess use these words or like lean into this, pay attention to this. And as a way of almost like not necessarily screening out people, but just making it like pretty clear what's about to happen if we do work together. And also what's not going to happen, right? So what's not going to happen is a sort of like extremely structured, didactic, outcome-oriented, control-based like view of communication. Like I want people to do this thing, and how can I communicate in a way that controls the outcome?
So it's not the one weird trick to get anything you want from somebody or the 5-part framework to win any negotiation.
I understand why people market things that way. But also, like, if I was amazing at persuasion, this session would cost $1 million. Like, what are we doing here, guys?
Right.
Yeah, and so I guess there's a sense of which try to find people who are like predisposed to this, because to be fair, like professional life is very much outcome oriented, right? What is the return on investment here? How can we have to make this thing, and so at some point I got to get people to do what we need to do to make our thing or do our work product. Like, it's fine. Like this is very fair. But so there's a subset of people though that are more amenable to different ways of thinking about this. Sometimes they may just be like highly functional in other areas, so they're not sweating making things happen in particular ways. But finding people who are a bit more open to notions of presence or connection, and then just like spending a lot of time talking about how sometimes it's better not to control the outcome. One of the most meaningful things I've ever sort of realized is that getting a hard yes out of somebody is great, but it is equally valuable to get a hard no.
Yeah.
That's a great outcome. I don't want to work with somebody who isn't super into me, my work, for example. And once I realized that was like just as valuable for me, the pressure to interact in like a pitch conversation or work evaporated. Right. And so then of course I end up being much better in these conversations because I'm not super scared. And to be honest, so the very first time I ever pitched work, this is how I learned this. 10 years ago, I went down to a law firm and I pitched a session, and the person was like, amazing, we'd love to work with you. The very next day, I pitched for the second time. So different law firm, different person, same pitch. And this time they said, I think you've made a mistake starting your business.
Well,
that's a direct quote. That's the hardest no I've ever received in my life.
Yeah.
So that was very challenging, right? But do you want to guess which of those people has sent me the most work in the last 10 years? Neither of those people has ever called me. And yet, here I am, right?
Right.
I don't need to convince everyone to be successful. And even the people it
Right.
looks like I convinced, also not necessarily convinced. So all I want to do is be a version of myself that people can meaningfully connect with. And eventually those people are going to work with me. And if there's enough of them to sustain me, great. And if not, then I'll go do something else. But I don't know. That's very struck with me for the last 10 years.
I think that's great. It reminds me a lot of one of my coaching mentors had this bit on business development and how to handle like a consultation or a sales call.
Yeah.
And the mindset that he offered was, don't approach it like you're trying to talk somebody into something or convince them to work with you. Take the position that there's already a good fit and a good reason for you to come together and exchange value or not. Like that's already just a fact out there in the world.
Yeah.
And all you're doing on the call is discovering together whether that's true in this case or not.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing to win at or lose at or succeed at or fail at. You're just trying to get to what's already true. And whatever it is fine as long as you get there.
Yeah, which is the exact same way, at least for me. That's every meaningful relationship you have in your life.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this is presence and connection.
Right. And I'm hearing a real undertone of like genuine curiosity as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
This conversation itself has taken a very different turn from how I thought it would, but I love it. I love the way that this is unfolding. It just feels very organic.
What have we missed? We should cover the things you thought we were going to.
So the work that you do is helping people tell better stories. And I think that that's a great skill set for anybody to have, because telling stories is something that we just do on a day-to-day basis. How was your day? Like, you're telling me a story when I ask you how your day was. And if it's a genuine question, I'm actually interested, then there's a skill set that every person can develop to tell better stories and be more impactful in the small amount of time that they take. Like, if there's one thing for storytelling that's important, what would you say that is?
The one thing that I always think about is honesty and meaningful. So the most important thing I think for storytelling is to share something meaningful. And, going to a storytelling workshop or reading, there are millions of books about storytelling. What you get out of those experiences is support and guidance in how to find things that are interesting that might make for good stories, and then tools for developing them into good stories. But all you really need, the most important thing is you have something meaningful to share. And I always say to people, once you find something meaningful, you can just offer it to another person. And it's not going to be super polished. It's not going to be the most efficient telling of the tale and so on. But that's okay. Stories get better over time. Storytellers get better over time. I've been telling some of the same stories in sessions for years. And I think they were pretty good when I started. And they're better now, different, but better. And it'll be 5 years from now, it'll be the same. But what really connects people, it's the meaning. It's the significance of what it is that you're sharing. It's not the sort of bells and whistles, the jokes at the beginning or the plot twist that you build in and so on. Those are really nice, right? But if there isn't a core, some sort of heart truth there that you're trying to share with people, then you won't have a heart truth connection. It's maybe the way to say it.
Right. So taking the performance out of it and just being genuine.
Doing your best to do that. Yeah. Yeah.
That tracks for me. Anytime when someone's being genuine, and it resonates, I feel it. And when someone's being performative, I just want to stop them and say hey, can you just be honest with me? Because that creates distance.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
We talked about this a bit, I think, in a prior episode, and it shows up in the work we do with the men's work and kind of training other trainers and things, where it's not about putting on a show and then you're in presentation or performance mode. It's about, can you get in touch with what's meaningful about this for yourself and allow yourself to experience those feelings deeply in real time in the presence of another person?
Yes.
So you're sharing a deeper part of yourself with them. And then that's this palpable thing that everybody can feel. And you get the goosebumps and the little hairs on the back of your arms or neck will stand up, and something happens in those moments.
Yeah. Of what I call dropping in, right? Just getting into, if you're going to tell me a story, bring me into it, drop into it so that I'm there with you, rather than you just reading me a grocery list of, oh yeah, here are all of the things that I did today or I did that day.
Yeah, this happened, this happened, this happened. No, that really resonates, Chris. And maybe this is another tip, but it's significant that what you're talking about is in the sort of men's work, so it's like far removed in a way from somebody's job sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I think if you're, when you come to work in a professional context, when you are making a presentation and so on, it's the same work of connection. And so what I actually I guess what I try to do and what I try to coach people to do is, even if you're talking about your job, you're going to prepare something to share. So it is a performance, it's a show. You can still prepare something that is built around your like deep meaning. You're in there, you feel it. And the fact that you just happen to crystallize it into a script or some speaking notes doesn't change the fact that it's like still deeply meaningful for you. And the audience can still have that connection, whether you're doing it in like spontaneously in the moment or like 100 times, right? That's a song, right? It's American Pie is meaningful, even though it's written down and you've heard it a million times, right? Like, cause it's, when it was created, it came from this place of like connection and resonance and presence and reflection and heart space and things like this.
And even in an individual performance of the same song, like Patrick, I'm sure you've had this experience. Some shows you're really feeling it.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's a better show and it's a more powerful performance and the audience feels it more impactfully. Or if you watch a show and the band is kind of phoning it in, that's not as satisfying an experience that's shared because the depth of presence and the depth of feeling isn't there.
Context matters, but where you're coming from matters. I mean, Ozzy Osbourne just had his last show, 2-3 weeks ago?
Right.
And the final song was Mama, I'm Coming Home. If I'm not,
wow.
So,
yeah.
And he's sitting there, in this beautiful leather throne that he had constructed for himself, like a week away from death. Not that anybody knew at the time, but we knew he was sick, and delivers this just heart-wrenching performance of the song Mama, I'm Coming Home. And yeah, like you can feel it just in the video. You didn't have to be there live with him. You can just
powerful.
It's powerful in itself. So yeah.
Yeah. One of the things we try to do, to the extent that it makes sense, is leave our listeners with something they can take away and apply in some way. And sometimes that's in the form of like a 5-part framework or something tactical and structured, but sometimes it's more on the level of mindset or like a shift they can make in how they think about or go about something,
right?
That they can use in some way. So I've framed that intentionally as in as broad, open terms as possible. But if there was a nugget that people could take from this that would be like stolen from your brain and gifted to our audience, what would that be?
Well, I think even this audience, we co-create these things. So it's stolen from all of us in this conversation.
Right.
But okay, here's something. I'll use public speaking as the context, but this works for any other sort of conversation or meeting. Is to think about the last time you had a really good presentation or performance, a really good interaction. And so think about this experience and then get very granular about why do you think it went so well? So think about your own experience and just notice like what happened. How did you prepare? Who was in the room? What were you talking about? Anything else that might sort of contribute on reflection to like this going very well. And then once you get granular in this experience, you can think about a few other situations that went really well, do the same sort of reflective analysis, and then you can look for pattern. And you can start to notice things like, oh, when I prepare in this specific way, or I talk to this sort of person, or et cetera, or what the topic is and so on, that tends to go very well for me. And then you can just systemize this preparation. So all of the times when you interact with stuff without learning anything from anybody new, any sort of special skills and so on, you can just look at your own experience, figure out with some level of granularity what supports you, and then just roll that out in more and more interactions. Like how can you get intentional for setting yourself up for success, whether that's a conversation with a person in your family, work conversations are maybe the most discreet, they're calendared and you can sort of plan and so on. But like, yeah, if you're going to see a friend, you're going on a date, like how can you support yourself in engaging the way that you want? And I think you can learn all of this from your own experience just by thinking about your past.
Kind of reverse engineering your own success and just being conscious about deconstructing it and doing more of what works.
Yeah. I mean, it really is the case that everybody's already great at communicating. And so I think you can learn a lot from just looking at yourself and being like, how's it? I mean, this is really how we learn to speak at all. right? We just imitate the words that we hear. We notice the reactions it gets. We speak more of those, less of other things. So I think we carry within us the ability to do all of the things that you might otherwise pay somebody to teach you to do. It's sometimes a lot quicker to get somebody to come in and give you a framework or something, but you've got it. We've all got it within us, I think.
Yeah. It reminds me a little bit of something I'll do sometimes. I was on a call earlier today with someone who was dealing with a little bit of imposter syndrome, has recently been kind of promoted and invited into this executive circle professionally, and was noticing like the feedback she had gotten was, we want you to contribute more and be more opinionated and speak up. And she found herself hesitant. And one of the fears was this interaction happened where she had expressed an opinion on something, and then this executive said, "Oh, I completely disagree with you." And she felt kind of shut down. But as it played out, it was like, oh, it was disagreeing over just a point of fact, and it didn't really matter. But she was just grappling with this, the dissonance between the actual significance of it and the emotional response that she felt. And so we looked in a completely different domain of life. She's also a mom and has a 4-year-old. And because we were talking about getting to this place of non-reactivity where someone else's reaction is meaningless to you. It's just that's how they're showing up, and you can be with it, and it doesn't have to bring with it this extra weight or meaning. She's like, I do that all the time with my 4-year-old because they can have a tantrum and they're freaking out. And it's like, my job isn't to react to that. It's to hold space and guide this interaction through to something good. And it's like, yeah, perfect. Then you already know exactly what to do. Just replace that 4-year-old with a 40-year-old, change the wardrobe slightly, but you got this. So that's a long-winded way of saying a lot of the best insights that I find come up in coaching contexts are pointing someone to something they are already good at. They just haven't thought to apply it in this particular
in a
domain.
different context. Yeah.
Yes. Let's put that on a t-shirt.
We'd have to make it more concise probably, but I'm game. We can start selling
We'll
shirts.
workshop it.
Totally. Anything else we haven't covered that would be worth touching on while we're at it?
I mean, I feel like I've talked a lot. You guys haven't.
That was the idea.
Okay. No, I mean, I've been very grateful to be here. I feel really honored that you guys would want to spend time with me and ask me these questions. Take such an interest. Like, that really makes me feel special. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. We'd started to become sick of hearing our own voices exclusively, and we wanted to bring a fresh voice into the conversation and a fresh perspective. And you came to mind right away. So it was great to have you on. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about what you do, if they're interested in possibly working with you? What are your coordinates?
Oh, thanks for asking. There's very limited coordinates. One is TellPeople.ca, TellPeople.ca. I'm sure this will be in the show notes. Yep. And LinkedIn. That's it. Those are the only two.
We will put both your LinkedIn link and your website in the show notes for people. So if you're interested in working with Chris or just finding out more about what he does, reach out there. There's so many more questions or directions we could go. We might have to have you back on at some point if you're willing to grant us more of your time.
Well, that's very kind, Chris. Anytime, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for being here with us. We really appreciate your time.
And for all the listeners, as always, we hope this was useful, and thanks for tuning in.